Welcome my friends, welcome back to Project TAS. If you're new to my channel, thank you for stopping by. If you've watched any of my previous videos, thank you for returning to my channel. Today we're doing another Blake 7 episode review from Season 3. As always, I will point out that this review will inevitably touch upon certain plot elements of this episode, and may even reveal developments for the series of Blake 7 as a whole. So if you haven't seen this episode, or anything else in terms of Blake 7, a huge spoiler alert is in order in case you wish to do a bit of Blake 7 catch-up prior to watching this review. You have been warned. Right, let's get to it, shall we? To the second of 3 Blake 7 script contributions from Mr. Ben Steed, following The Harvest of Kairos, and would be followed by Season 4's Power. This is perhaps the better effort of the 3. Unfortunately, that still isn't saying much in terms of its overall quality. When I was young, and with too much time on my hands, I envisioned a relaunch of Blake 7, much like they're doing with every television series and film idea they're making these days. And I considered a way of undoing what had happened in Blake 7 in order to have the main characters alive again. I won't go into the details now, as it's not very interesting, and the idea itself would probably piss off a lot of Blake 7 fans. Suffice it to say that our heroes had lost the Liberator, but still had Aurak, and were planning on using the planet Sardos, i.e. the planet in this episode, to recreate or rebuild the Liberator using the machines on the planet and Aurak's knowledge of the ship's design and systems. Essentially, the machines in question are nothing more than a bunch of replicators, that hole in the wall that Star Trek characters always got their lunch from. Yet they are presented in Moloch as an incredible piece of breakthrough technology. I think that's supposed to be based on the huge size of some of these machines, some that can create a fully functioning ship at the touch of a button. It might have been more interesting to see some of these larger machines in operation rather than the same pair of shoebox-sized letterboxes used over and over again, but this is Blake 7 and I'm sure there were budgetary squeezes. It's also the fact that while the Star Trek replicators had lots of pre-programmed chicken sandwich and Earl Grey tea recipes, the boxes in Blake 7 are actually scanners as well. You scan an object in one of the boxes and it gives you this credit card which you then enter into another box and it produces an identical, fully functioning copy of the same object. So it's a little more long-winded, but of course in theory it's capable of creating a greater variety of things. Except for living things. More on that aspect in a minute. What's the point of this latest ramble by me? Well, while the Blake 7 version of a Star Trek replicator is actually presented quite well, as something unique and quite advanced for a piece of technology, there are other things going on in this episode that find it difficult to gel with the rest of the central premise, and seem to sit on the side rather than actually being able to help the story along. I'm also not sure that this replicator box thing is the central premise of the story. Maybe I should start from the beginning. Via a piece of rather laboured exposition from Villa, we learn that the Liberator has been following Servalan in her big mechanical pterodactyl for 27 days. They do not know where Servalan is going, only that it is apparently important to know where she is going, as a president does not leave the bulk of her battle fleet behind without good reason. Why that reason is more important than taking out one of your biggest enemies is frankly beyond me. It is suggested by Dana to simply blast her out of existence once and for all, but a gruff response by Avon puts that idea out of circulation. They then lose contact with the ship as it enters a dark region, which, when they enter it, causes the Liberator to almost crash into a planet that is situated within the darkness. It is also quickly established that the teleport won't react well with this dark field, which raises the issue as to how to investigate this whatever it is without having to go into the darkness again and risk detection. While they are monitoring the situation, they learn that they can enter the field covertly by stowing on board a passing troop carrier that is making its way to the planet. Inevitably, Villa is bullied into making up half of this two-person mission, and is also inevitably the one who gets captured by the ship's inhabitants. Well, perhaps captured is the wrong word. He is merrily manhandled into joining the passengers by Doran for an in-flight piss-up, and he is very much part of the gang by the time Tarrant, the other half of the team, has extracted himself from the ship and locates Villa, who has very much warmed to Doran. In fact, if Tarrant hadn't found Villa, I wonder if Villa would have even bothered returning to the Liberator. Anyway, Tarrant isn't as big a fan of Doran as Villa is, and demonstrates this by beating him up, before menacingly manhandling Villa to this tent thing that everyone keeps turning up at. Tarrant threatens to shoot Villa with his gun if he doesn't comply with his wishes. Villa basically tells him where he can stick said gun, and good for him.
If it comes down to that, Tarrant, there isn't really a lot of point, is there?
Meanwhile, we get to learn why Servalan has left her Federation without a president for the last 27 days, and presumably the next 27 as well to get back there. A Federation ship that crashed on this planet during the war with the Andromedans has requested her presence, promising her something extraordinary. She's rather nonplussed to learn that the senior officers have all met with accidents, and you may accompany that word with a pair of bunny ears either side of it, and found the remnants of the ship's crew being led by a section leader and a unit commander who enjoy slapping defenceless women across the face, slapping their bums, and making them sex slaves to the rest of the men who do nothing but hang around outside the base in an area that looks suspiciously like an English earth quarry, with some wire fencing here and there, making fires, and being cold. Servalan tells the section leader to place himself under arrest pending court-martial. The section leader misunderstands what she means and instead places her under arrest and takes her to this room with various equipment in it. This is where the Blake 7 replicators are first introduced to us. In addition to learning about these magic boxes, we learn that section leader Gross, rather an appropriate name, is actually using this technology to construct his own fleet, which, given Servalan's baffling trek across the cosmos to retrieve a single legion, is almost certainly greater in size than her own diminished force. He has only summoned her here to acquire the specs of her new flagship, the crocodile thing she flies in nowadays, at which point, once he's copied this ship a few dozen times, he'll presumably conquer the Federation and have even more women to be gross to. Servalan, meanwhile, is cast out to the salivating lackeys outside. Avon and the rest of the crew are factors that Gross and his fellow slimeballs hadn't counted on encountering. Avon and Dana are getting to the heart of the plot. Villa is having Servalan offered to him as presidential poontang. However, he doesn't like her rates, so decides to try and take out a guard with her. They technically succeed, but Servalan dissolves their partnership immediately afterwards when she realises that Villa is utterly useless and she won't last 2 seconds with him should they come across more than one guard. Why she lets Villa live, I don't know. Why Villa didn't kill Servalan when he had the chance? Well, maybe he's taking a leaf out of Blake's book. Don't kill your enemies in cold blood. It's a good lesson for the boys and girls of 1980 to learn, but it goes without saying it would have solved a lot of problems for them if they had ignored this lesson. But we've discussed this in other reviews. We will again. Where were we? Oh yeah, Tarrant has disappeared and will reappear in Federation attire, ready to start pushing Villa about again. Callie is on teleport duty for the zillionth time, so don't worry about her. Villa and Tarrant meet up with Doran and some woman we keep seeing throughout the episode. They then go into this base and interrupt Avon's wrist being tortured session, kill the assembled guards because it's a crap way to torture someone, and then meet Fungus the Bogeyman's nephew, who's been living in a computer thing between the replicator boxes. He then manages to trick Callie into teleporting him on board the Liberator by doing a really impressive Tarrant impression, but ends up dead seconds later because it turns out Moloch's a puppet and Callie didn't beam the puppeteer along with him. Oh, that's the thing's name, by the way, Moloch. Which is the name of the episode. Hey, that's why. Yeah, I've missed out loads of details concerning this episode. I should probably point out that the technology wasn't just there on a random planet. It was created by the planet's indigenous race, the Sardoans, who were then brushed to one side by Gross and the Blue Meanies when they turned up, and used the technology for their own wicked purposes. Also, the actual reason that Moloch dies once he's teleported is the aforementioned life forms can't be replicated reason. They can if they have a life support machine handy. Once he was teleported out of it, well, bye-bye Moloch. To be fair, this isn't a terrible episode. Yes, I very much bashed the replicator part of it because we've seen it before in Star Trek, where it's not that big a deal, but that doesn't come to mind when watching this episode. Avon's info dump with regard to how the technology will affect the evolution of the Sardoans and how they've made predictions as to what they will look like in 2 million years, among other things, is actually interesting if you can grasp what they're talking about. And while Dana is the only woman not being shoved to the side either physical-wise or plot-wise, it's a marked improvement that the worst culprits of sexism are actually portrayed as thugs, as opposed to enlightened macho men, aka Jarvik in Harvest of Kairos. Doran is not exactly the most shining example of pro-woman thinking, but at least he doesn't slap anyone. He kills a couple of baddies, and if that still isn't enough for any outraged feminist watching, he ends up dead anyway. From a big light, apparently. Oh, but going back to Dana briefly, she is made out to be incredibly stupid by Avon when scanning the planet's surface. He also poo-poos her caution when she prevents him from eating an apple. It follows the conventional Blake 7 premise that everyone must die except the main cast. The only guest character who is still alive by the end is Colonel Ashford, and he didn't have any lines or any clothes. He didn't even need an actor to play him, although he did need a haircut. There are some very effective touches, like when Avon points into the Moloch orb, echoing a shot we've seen a few times previously, which obviously indicates A, that he's on the right track, and B, also enticing the audience with whatever this thing might be. Also, the way Moloch does the aforementioned impression of Tarrant is done very well, and even a little creepily.
She will, Tarrant. She will. She will. She will. She will.
So, why is Moloch following the same starless path as Ben Steed's previous story, the aforementioned Harvester Blah Blah? Well, all these different elements don't really fit together. A lot of the scenes seem to be doing their own thing without really contributing to the overall plot. Villa seems to be observing the plot as opposed to interacting in it. He mingles with the prisoners as opposed to really interact with them, and no, I haven't forgotten he gets his own uniform. We see how Servalan avoids being enjoyed by Gross's Neanderthals by being offered to Villa, but their time together doesn't really amount to anything. And no, I haven't forgotten that they killed a guard together. He goes with Tarrant into the base, but doesn't really do anything significant. It's a pity, because of all the main cast, his character is the best served and most accurately reflected. The rest of them give us info dumps and exposition, and play for time until we reach the final revelation, which, upon seeing that puppeteered, mono-eyed bogey, we laugh ourselves stupid, as apparently the cast did as well. That's assuming we haven't already died from laughing from the CSO image of Colonel Ashford, who looks like Sideshow Bob as a blow-up doll gone wrong in a fish tank. The episode is more a semblance of scenes rather than a flowing plot. I think Avon sums it up best when asked why they came to Sardos.
That's Blake's ship.
He liked to think so.
And why did you come here?
I wish I knew.
And he's being truthful in that reply. And if he isn't sure, I'm not sure that we are sure either. If he did know, I think the episode's evolution would have developed a lot better. But he didn't. He followed Servalan because otherwise they would never know. That was the first warning sign, and the rest of the episode follows as promised. We learn about this planet and kill a few people along the way before going on our merry way back, pursued by Federation forces. Yes, you can apply that synopsis to other Blake 7 plots. In this case, our 50-something minute journey feels somewhat redundant and meaningless. Probably enjoyable for most Blake 7 fans, but I just couldn't quite get on board with it. Could anything be done to improve it? I wish I knew. That concludes my review on Moloch. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like this video, please share this video, please subscribe to my channel, and please check out my other Blake 7 episode reviews. And I trust, Avon, your wrist wasn't hurting because of another slightly more unpleasant to think about reason. God, that was low even for me. See you later, guys.